aware that this presentation is being recorded. I am Ashley Lusher, the Gift Shop and Program Coordinator at the Pajarito Environmental Education Center, or PEAK, in Los Alamos, New Mexico. I will be the moderator for tonight's talk. Generous support for details about other PEAK programs, please visit peaknature.org. Just a few logistics for this presentation before we get started. Our presenter will be taking questions via the Zoom chat and from our in-person audience. For those of you watching from home, please find the chat feature in the Zoom app menu bar. Type your question to the PEAK moderator in the chat window at any time during the talk, and I'll read them during the Q&A at the end. Please remember that not everyone in the room here with us has a microphone, so there may be a delay when we're listening to a question from the live audience. Don't worry, we'll be back in a second and repeat the question for everyone to hear. After this talk, you will receive a short evaluation. Please take time to fill that out. Your input helps us improve future programs. I'll now pass this over to the Mountaineers.
Hi, my name is Evan Rose. I am the Vice President. Do we have any way of doing that? Can you hear me at all? Okay, or we don't know. It echoes once. Thank you, Michael. Is this working? Keep talking, keep talking. Echo, 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 echo. Did it go away? Is it better now? No, it's still there. Technical difficulties. How's this? We still have the echo.
Start singing something.
Row, row.
Evan, let me try this one.
This one?
Try again.
Try again.
How was this?
Oh, that's better.
Okay, we did it. Okay, so my name is Evan Rose. I'm the Vice President of the Los Alamos Mountaineers this year. This is our monthly meeting held on the 14th.
They can obviously hear it.
Let's see. What we're going to do today is we're going to.
Oh, he's having trouble.
Hey, we fixed one problem. Oh.
Now shoot.
Oh, thank you. We've got on the agenda now, we're going to have a report from Tony Taylor about our 2024 climate school, which was quite successful. Then trip reports on Gene Deber, and then our presentation. And the presentation is the changing landscape of ultrarunning, 25 years of perspective and look forward by Dave Koblenz. So now I'll give the mic to Tony.
Okay, yeah, so I'm Tim Taylor. I'm past president of Mountaineers, and I actually was coordinating the climbing school this year. We finished May 4th, and it was a successful school. It was taught by Mountain Skills of Taos. There were 4 outdoor sessions, 12 students enrolled, and we had a Los Alamos Mountaineer volunteer at 3 of 4 sessions. It's actually Tyler Mix, and I'd like to thank him for doing that. So I'm going to show a lot of photos, and they're all from either Tim Rennick or Steve Lucas, who are class participants. So before I start, we did have a climbing school scholarship. In fact, Susie Miller and William Strait actually underwrote a scholarship for 2 students in honor of Jim Strait, who was a lifetime member of the Mountaineers. He's in the center photo here. And our 2 scholarship applicants or students were Phoebe Reed. Phoebe Reed, who's climbing there, and Ben Roback. So, and then we had additional donors as well, who enabled us to underwrite some of the costs for all of the students, in particular part of the tips were the climbing guides. So our first session actually was supposed to be a week earlier, on April 6th, but it got snowed out. The weather was really cold then, if you would remember. I was out and I was freezing. So they postponed the first class by a week. It was held at the Taos Junction Bridge, and what they did was climbing movement and introduction to the lane. That's really important, because if you're going to have a bunch of students climbing, you need a lot of students belaying. So you see them at this crag. The next week, they went to Tres Piedras, which is just a lovely place. A lot of climbing, belaying, and they were taught simple anchors. So again, some pictures there of folks in the school. There was a lot of rope work. So the instructors showed folks how to, do things with the rope, do the anchors, flake the rope, get it prepared for belaying and so on. And you can see some of that happening in these photos. April 28th was again at TP, Tres Piedras. That was introduction to trad equipment, removing gear, and seconding climbing. And you can see some of the folks climbing. This is more advanced climbing territory than the first 2 sessions. And then the last session is the place that I haven't been, but at the Dead White Cholla climbing area in Taos Gorge, in particular the Panorama Crag. And they did cleaning of sport anchors and then a lot more climbing. And again, I think this was more advanced climbing territory. So with that, this is a final picture of the crew and the guides, and I think they all had a great time. I heard from several of them, and hopefully we'll do this again next year. So thanks. So I think Jean is up next.
All right, these are the trip reports for the club trips of this last month and a half or so. We had so many club trips, yay, that we didn't have time to include private trips in this presentation. So in the future, we'll kind of watch out to see if we have room for private trips again, and we'll do that. We started out, Charlie Strauss led a mountain biking trip to Fruta and Moab in mid-April, and he had some fantastic weather and some fantastic riding. And Bill Podorsky led a trip out of Blanding, Utah, where they spent 5 days exploring the canyon country that you can get at from Blanding. And here's a photo of the participants. There were 8 folks, participants in Cheesebox Canyon and also on Comb Ridge. We had a trip leaders dinner, both for current trip leaders and future trip leaders on May 1st. And we talked about all things trip leading. our president, Sylviatum, is in the process of doing a revision of our wonderful guide for trip leaders. And we got a lot of good conversation going about what are some of the challenges and how to meet those. And we're going to update the trip leaders guide this year. And just a brief note, one of our new members, Kelly Brownson, is a ranger at Bandelier and has been involved in national park search and rescue for 15 years. And he said the number one reason that they ended up by having to go find people was the party split up. And they didn't have a sufficient plan to make it work. So we'll talk more about that later, but just a heads up, that's a danger point when your party splits up. Carrie Shimmick led a 4-day backpack into the Grand Canyon. 3 folks came on that trip. They hiked down to South Kaibab and spent a couple of nights camping at Phantom Ranch. And then they got to go up towards the North Rim, and the hiker's bridge across the Bright Angel Creek had been blown out and not yet put back into place. And so they crossed a pretty exciting crossing of the creek to get to see Ribbon Falls, and they were well rewarded. Bill Podorski led a llama trip out of Tickaboo Canyon, and I think he possibly pronounced that Trikite Canyon, where 8 folks came, packed into a central camp with the llamas, and then spent 6 days exploring the wilderness. And they had their llamas and massive amounts of sandstone. And there's Bill, the fearless llama trip leader. There was so much interest in this trip that a second trip was formed, and Mike Fugate led that trip. Another 8 people, 8 were on Bill's and 8 on Mike's, and they went into Trail Canyon near this same area, and had very adventurous hiking in the sandstone, and just marvelous vistas, marvelous terrain they traveled. Then closer to home, Zach Baker led our spring version of the Los Alamos Mountaineers / Peak outing, and they hiked the Ancho Canyon to Red Dot Trail. And it was a stormy day. You'd think that May would be too hot, but this was one day when we had some good rains and lightning and hail uptown, and the spring flowers were coming out. And they had 7 people on that trip. And then Evan Rose led a trip that's becoming kind of an annual event. I hope it continues to be an annual event. A trip to climb Cabazon Peak, one of the volcanic plugs over in northwestern New Mexico. And he got this fabulous photo on the bottom, a panoramic view of 4 different volcanic plugs out there. And then Cabazon Peak, the one they climbed, is at the top here. And the photo on the left is a really good picture of what the climbing is like. 4th class climbing, he brings along some hand lines to help folks in the places that are somewhat more exposed. And you can see that all the mountaineers are wearing helmets because of the chance of rocks being kicked loose. So really an excellent trip, and I recommend it to anyone. It's fabulously exciting. And then they spent another day, most of the group went to see some ruins and some lovely petroglyph panels out near Cabazon. And we had 19 people on that trip. And so I'm happy to say that so far this year, and we're not even halfway through, 181 mountaineers have gone on club trips. 30 a month. It's really fabulous. Then looking ahead, if you look on the Mountaineers website, it's lamountaineers.org, you can find a calendar, and there's top roping sessions every Tuesday and Thursday evening, and they post on this calendar the location, so you can go find the group. We'll have Monday night hikes starting up that Alan Mills is going to lead. It's a hike up Pajarito Mountain and a potluck dinner. Then this weekend, Scott Bailey's going to lead a overnight backpack to the San Pedro Parks. And Sunday, Olivia Lee is leading a strenuous hike up Glorieta Baldy from Apache Canyon east of Santa Fe. Looking ahead into June, Ann Setsangi and Juliana Fessenden are going to lead a weekend trip over to Mount Taylor, which is near Grants, New Mexico, and hike up the peak. And there's the trip is close to full, and a waiting list is being formed for that trip. Tanya Pietras is leading a 10-day backpack in Alaska in the Revelation Mountains at the end of July. Kathleen Grutzmacher is leading a 10th Mountain Division hike bike trip in the central Colorado mountains. The trip's full, but there's a waiting list for that one. And then Bill's just announced maybe the last llama trip with this particular outfitter out of Boulder, Utah, that's going to be in early October. And then the annual trip to Moab, the week-long trip around Veterans Day holiday, November 2nd to 10th. And all of these trips can be found on lamountaineers.org. There are a bunch of volunteer opportunities, and we encourage all mountaineers to try to participate in these. The first one is for a Zoom meeting on June 5th. Los Alamos County is hired a contractor to help update, renovate, revive the open space and trails management plan for our county. And they're asking the public to participate at this point to identify trails that we think are in need of repair or help. If there are conflicts between different kind of trail users, bikers, hikers, equestrians, etc. And are there any places where people have, concerns for their safety? At the first meeting, they identified the Bio Canyon Trailhead parking lot as kind of problematic. So this is a chance to give our input to say what we think is good, bad, or ugly about the current status of trails in our county and what we would like to see fixed. So super important. There'll be information on the LA Daily Post to give a Zoom link. This second meeting is going to be on Zoom. And there also will be a link to how to just go give comments if you can't attend the meeting. So super important for Los Alamos people to participate. The Vice Caldera is going to have a work party on the Coyote Call Trail on Saturday, June 8th. They need to cut some trees and to work on the trail. Meet at 10 o'clock at the entrance station for the Caldera. And then Los Alamos County, Eric Peterson, our outdoor specialist, is going to have a July Trails Day to work on the White Rock Canyon Rim Trail. And if you go to the website volunteerlosalamos.org, you can sign up for that. You should wear work clothes, bring gloves, but they'll provide tools for that. All right, upcoming trips. If you become a member, you can get announcements to your email for all of these things. And you go on to lamountaineers.org, and there's a tab that says membership that takes you and shows you how to join. And we'd love for you to participate with us. Upcoming, in particular on the Monday night hikes, the Monday, June 17th, the Los Alamos Mountaineers have essentially invited the whole town of Los Alamos to come. So it will be re-advertised in the summer what's going on in Los Alamos brochure. So it would be really great if as many mountaineers come as possible. It'll be to meet at the ski area and hike up to the top for the potluck dinner, and bring your first aid kit and your raincoat. And there'll be an email coming out about it. But it'd be great if a lot of mountaineers could come. And then we'll do a beginner backpack the first weekend in August, and I'll get that on the calendar soon. It's a cooperative event with Peak, so we're working together with them. And if there's some trip you'd like, let me know. Here's my email address, jeandewart7, and it's also on the website. All right, thank you.
Okay, so I am Juliana Fessenden, and I and Ann Sansanji are the program chairs for the club. And our job is to find really cool people to talk and share their adventures. And so today I get to introduce Dave Koblenz. And I asked Dave, how should I introduce you? And he said a couple of things. And so I've got a couple of things to share. One is he started doing ultra running. And so an ultra is anything more than a marathon. So 26.2 miles is an ultra. And he started to do that 25 years ago within weeks of his son being born. Yeah, 3 weeks. And so really, and in Eugene, Oregon, and he was hooked. And so since then, he's been running 140 different ultras these last 25 years that have been recorded, but in reality, 220 that he's self-recorded. So a very impressive runner. And what I really liked about this talk is that there's a safety piece that he's going to share along with the adventure piece. And so with that, I'll get out of the way and introduce Dave Koblenz.
Oh, thanks for that nice introduction, Juliana. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for coming out to share a bit of your evening with me. After that great introduction about me and my running, I must admit that this talk's going to be a little bit less about me as a runner and more about the state of the sport. So it'll be a mix. But I do want it to be a little speculative, a little provocative, where we're going. And as the third bullet says, why should you all care? And some of you may be thinking about ultra running, some of you may be search and rescue volunteers, some of you may have friends out in the hills. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about may affect you directly if you're not specifically out there running yourself. So I'll start with what is ultra running? I often get asked that. Juliana gave a nice succinct definition, which is perfectly fine. 26.205 miles would be an ultra run, right? And I want to spend most of the talk on how has it changed. It's ultra running, like most outdoor sports, it just changed hugely in the last 10 years with technology, social media. Now I'm going to touch on that, how it really has affected ultra running. In some ways, many parallels to climbing. There are a lot of climbers in here too. So when we went from trad climbing to sport climbing, those same factors and bits that affect climbing often are very similar to what has happened in ultra running. We'll see that. And then I want to chat a little bit about where we're going on this. So when I was an undergraduate, I really liked this poem by Thomas Hardy about convergence of the twain, about the Titanic coming together with the iceberg. The two developed separately and came together in a clash of titans. And you can see the actual quote there, but the clash of two spheres. And in some ways, this is a metaphor for this talk. We have the Titanic, which are basically the growing number of inexperienced runners, and we have the iceberg out there somewhere, which is the changing, with climate change and the changing landscape physically. Those two, the convergence of the twain, these two are going to lead to some pretty serious problems somewhere, sometime. So this will be the theme of the talk. So what is ultra running? Well, first of all, as long as people have been running, there's been ultra running. So there's a long history in the indigenous peoples of running. The Tarahumara, in Africa, there were thousands of years ago, people chase down prey and went on ultra runs to eat. And only recently have we kind of labeled it and claimed it as our own, anything over 26.2 miles. And some histories have ultra running starting with the Western States 100-miler, when in fact there's a long history of 6-day walking races in the 1800s, very long, complex history of that, even in our culture. So I do want to acknowledge there's been a lot of different types of ultra runners in the world. We're just new to it. Generally, it's 50Ks, 100Ks, 100 milers, both trails and roads. I'm a trail runner, so this talk will be mostly about the trail situations, but there's a whole other world of ultra runners that run, God forbid, roads for hundreds of miles in 6 days. So we're gonna explore a little bit. This is I did go down and run the Tarahumara back in 2010. Just quite an adventure. There's a whole nother talk. It really was very much like the book that you read, Google's book on Born to Run. It was a lot of fun, and they really do look like that and run in with tires on their feet in the harachas. So my perspective of Juliana summarized it very nicely. First started running in 1998. Lots and lots of 100-milers, lots of 50-milers. I'm on the board of a few big runs, so I'm on the organizing side, which is a whole nother perspective of how it's changing. And I like to think that I really witnessed firsthand this change in ultra running and have something to share. And this is kind of a fun photo from last year, the San Juan solstice. So this is Lake San Cristobal of Lake City, Colorado. So the run starts down in Lake City, runs up around this area, around the divide here and back down 50-miler. That's next month. That's my next run. So I'm hoping to be snow like that, because sliding down a snowbank for a few hundred meters is a very nice break from running. So who are ultra runners? If you squint and see, this is not the best presentation, but this is the age. So most ultra runners are in the 35-ish to 40. Most ultra runners are well educated, college graduates or advanced degrees. Most ultra runners are male, and a lot of ultra runners are basically Caucasian or white. So for better or for worse, this has not changed. Generally, you have 40-year-old, highly educated white males with high income. It's kind of the type classic of the ultra runner. And although I guess younger people are getting involved, it really is, you go to these races and you see this demographic. And as a race organizer, we're trying to change that, bring more women and underrepresented minorities to ultra running, because there's 200 entrants and you have 99% white males. It's a little bit old to run with the same people, right? So how has ultra running changed? And so I'm going to have a series of shots here of people, equipment, races from the early 2000s, late 1990s, when ultra running really was hitting its stride, and today. So this is a view of Tim Tweetmeyer, many-time champion of Western States. I mean, this is what the champion ultra runner looked like in 1999, and this is what they look like today. So it's a little bit different. Ann Trayson, 14-time winner of Western States 100. She was the real deal. She would often finish bloody, dirty, falling down. And Courtney DeWalt today is often considered the greatest of all time, because people don't remember Ann Trayson, who, in my opinion, was a lot more accomplished runner. But point being, they were pretty much look like weekend hikers, and today equipment and running clothes and the expectation of this crowd is changing what the runner looks like. So that's been a big change. Gear. So these are some pictures from the Ultra Running magazine ad. I used to wear one of these fanny packs. It's a horrendous thing to put on your waist with bottles of water. these power bars. I don't know, who remembers power bars? Some people are, like the only thing you would eat on a run, right? They're the god awful things you put in your mouth and they would tear your dental work out. I mean, maybe if you heated them up on the stove, you made poured them over ice cream, it might be a little bit better. But that was about it. You had Coke jugs full of water that you carry, a few Snickers bars, and your choices were very limited. And now, this is a typical example of a kit in the ultrarunning. I mean, every single piece of equipment here costs at least $50 or $100, echoing back to why we have high income people in ultrarunning. But if you look through all this stuff, very specialized, very detailed, very specific equipment for all kinds of things. So ultrarunning has moved from generic gear to you gotta have an RAI membership to afford ultrarunning, or you're just not gonna be in the gear. Races, so races have changed enormously. So this is my favorite race, of course, Hard Rock 100 up in Silverton, Colorado. This is the 2001 finish. This is what the finish line looked like. There was a rock in front of the gym with a few people, and when you finish the race, you kiss the rock. That was the Hard Rock thing. And now it's a very different setting. You come into the shoe with flags and the lights and the sponsors. So for someone who ran it and finished it when it looked like that, to finish today when it looks like this, you can't help but say, things are a little bit different. And of course, Hard Rock is nothing compared to UTMB race, which has, it's in Chamonix, France, with literally 2,000 or 3,000 runners, meeting 20,000 spectators, media coverage, helicopters, drones. It is a big deal. European ultrarunning is a completely different game than the US. And I'm commenting on how the US has changed. European running is lots of this, not much of this. I'll try not to be too biased. And what about entries? When you wanted to enter Ultra Run back 20 years ago, literally in the back, the last pages of the Ultra Running magazine, there was an entry form, and you filled it out, put a check in it, mailed it in. No waiting list, really. You just entered maybe a month before the race. And even locally, we had the Mountain Trail Series, which I helped organize. And we had just people showed up and we did runs. And now it's all online. Almost every race of any notoriety or merit has long waiting lists. You need to sign up a year in advance and know what you're going to be doing in June 2026. You can't just wake up at the end of June and say, I think I'll go run San Solstice. And I just realized this picture is exactly the same picture of me sliding down the snow. So there is some years we have a lot of snow, like last year. Many years now, no snow at all up on Provide. So that's another bit I'll get to, the changing terrain of ultra running and how climate change is affecting that. Some numbers. So this is 1998, the first year I ran an ultra. There were 11,100 unique finishes of ultra runs in the United States. So it was at that time a fringe sport. None of your friends knew what it was. Family didn't know what it was. It was pretty much out there. And today, last year, we had 130,000 unique finishes of an ultra race. So the same person may finish twice and gets bid into that. So that's not unique ultra runners, but unique finishes. But this exponential growth, blue being the males and the red being females, is pretty apparent. And you will note the women percentage is increasing with time. It's to the point now we have about 30% female finishes of all ultra runners. They tend to run the 50Ks, maybe 50 milers, not so much the 100 milers, because women are a lot smarter than men. And they don't run one race and say, I can go run the little 100 tomorrow. They get more prepared, so they generally run the shorter races. and get good at those first. And this is a plot of the number of races. So when I first was running, first entered ultra, there were 143 races in the United States, and now there's 2,700. So both the number of races have grown exponentially and the number of people finishing. So what are the four main changes and how are they coming together? And I'll have just a series of slides here, 4 slides about that. We're getting more but less experienced runners. We're getting more money in the system with sponsorships and races being for profit. Where social media is playing a huge role. So how does that motivate the runner? Do you want to go out and have an experience in the hills, or do you want to keep up with your friend on social media? And then what's technology doing? So we're up to 35,000 first-time ultra runners this last year. So these are first timers who have never run an ultra race before. How many ran something last year? 35,000. So that's contributing to the exponential growth. And these runners tend to be less experienced in the outdoors. They're not coming from a backpacking background or a hiking background when they know the weather, they know the mountains. They just say, hey, this is, I read the Born to Run book. That sounds cool. I want to impress my social media crowd. Sign me up. We'll see that can lead to problems. Follow the money. So money is probably the biggest change in ultra running in the last 20 years. Both sponsored athletes who now basically have their own companies associated with them. And then the races themselves. This is a list of all the Western ultras in the Western US that are pretty popular and good races. I highlighted the ones in yellow that are not for profit. And when I first started running, every race there was no for-profit race. Every race was non-profit or just a club race. And this influence on money, expectations of the runners, expectations of the race directors, has changed the sport hugely. So now you have race directors who want to make a buck, and they're making a living. And what does that mean for runner support, runner expectation, the safety envelope? That has all changed. So I just summarize here: more runners, more profit, right? If you're making a living having runners, you want to have 300 or 400 or 500 runners, not 100. And how do you do that? Well, that's an economic question. In social media, of course, this is playing a role. Now, what motivates today's runner? I mean, we get a lot of this where you're out on a run and you stop and everyone's on their phone, putting up pictures, putting up the story. And it's, wait a minute, why are you actually running? Are you running for the social media or are you running for yourself? And this, of course, has changed a lot. I mean, even the race I helped organize, the Hard Rock 100, we have this Hard Rock podcast, which is all a big social media splash, live streaming now at the run itself. So you either can fight it and be a Luddite and try to go there, or you try to help it evolve in the best way possible to preserve the values of the runs. And then technology. So technology has changed. It's not just Gore-Tex jackets and lighter weight shoes and better hydration systems, but these runner tracking GPS-based software has really changed training and probably more profoundly with race organizers. So now race organizers want all runners to wear a GPS tracking unit so they know where every runner is. And that's great for the runs. It's my own opinion that when people carry these GPS trackers by themselves out in the hills, it gives them a false sense of security. I know where I am. Maybe I can send an SOS signal, so therefore I don't need to bring my heavy rain jacket. I can bring my light rain jacket. That is part of the problem. So it's both part of the solution and part of the problem, depending on how it's used and who's using it. So here's a good example. I'm really glad Andy Musberg is here because he went on this trail. This is on all trails, there's a trail marked, here's Nambe Saddle here, right? You remember this? So this is Nambe Saddle, you're going up to Baldy, up here, here's Windy Saddle, here's Nambe Saddle, here's the Skyline Trail, Catherine Lake is here. And you say, well, I'm gonna take a shortcut down to Nambe Saddle, and here's a trail. And it's in all trails, and it's actually the boundary between ranger districts. And you start, and Andy, speak up if you like, you start going down this trail that's shown on all trails, and it's, this ain't a trail.
That's very smart. You said no more.
And this is just one, and this is the only one I'm really familiar with, this is local, and I'm gonna laugh about it, Andy has been on it. I'm sure there are hundreds of these mismarked trails in mapping software like Avenza or All Trails. And this is going to get people in trouble when the sun's going down, the rain's coming in. Let's take the shortcut, and that would be a big mistake because which search and rescue is going to think, oh, they went that way, right? That's not even a trail. So technology is both part of the solution, and there's a big part of the problem if it's used incorrectly. So this is kind of a fun. This is what it looks like when you're a race director signed up for map progress. Everyone's carrying a GPS unit, and you can sit in the comfort of the local brew pub and watch the progress of the runners. And if one gets in a car and drives to the hotel room, you don't have to call search and rescue because you can see, oh, they're in town. So it is a good thing too. It helps. Say it like that. Technology is not foolproof. So it is good, and it has shortcomings if it's used particularly for training incorrectly, but it's really been a good thing for race directors because it does ensure a better safety envelope for the runners because you really know where every runner is all the time, and if it stops on the course and sits there for an hour, you might send somebody out to see what's going on. So, summarizing the iceberg, the runners, like I said, we have then versus now, limited experience. Now, in the old days, runners used to have a hiking background first. There was an expectation of self-support that's kind of missing now. Technology will save the day is a lot of how young runners think. You know, people were intrinsically motivated. I want to go out and enjoy nature. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to take baby steps. And now it's, oh my gosh, did you see what Kilian Jornet did last week up in the Alps? I got to go do that. That's an external motivation. In the past, we had low numbers with general experience, and now lots of inexperienced runners. And then performance was self-evaluated. So you knew yourself, you knew the terrain you were running in, and it was self-limiting in terms of getting into trouble. And now social media really sends people out doing stuff, maybe not so much with the running, you're not skiing off 30-foot jumps and mountain biking down perimeter trail 50 miles an hour like you saw on a video on social media, but it still leads to people getting into trouble. So that's the iceberg waiting for the Titanic. Right? So it's a changing world out there with climate change. We all know it, we live it. It's getting warmer, the weather's getting more chaotic. What does that mean? We have more wildfires, more erosion, trails are in less shape, trails that are marked on those mapping software packages are either obliterated by windfall up in the Sangres. I know up in the Santa Barbara Basin, very few of those trails are passable now. You know, usually the East Fork, the Middle Fork, possibly the East Fork, West Fork. That's it. All those other trails takes you 3 times as long to use any of the trails. The Serpentine Trail covered with tree fall. And so that messes up your estimate of how long you're going to be out. Lots of safety problems with that. So this, without getting into politics of climate change, the landscape is changing, and that's affecting ultrarunning. So just to summarize, like I said, wildfires, trails look like this now. It's getting warmer, hotter earlier, so hydration's an issue. And we just had the Hayes run last week, or 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. Rapid changes in weather that were unexpected, catching runners up on Kenyatta Bonita in a total fog bank, cold, wet, and it got worse during the day. All this comes together to impact, or you combine that with experienced runners, and you got a recipe for a disaster. This is just another interesting number tidbit. These were the number of fires affecting the CDT trail back in the early 90s. So a half a dozen or so every year. So there are fires. Now, if you go on the CDT website, there are dozens and dozens of active fires, and the numbers look like this. Even today, if you go on, there's 28 active fires, one locally, here by Consequently, affecting the CD trail, affecting trails, making trails look like this rather than well-marked green, hospitable places to go. So there's a little bit of a tying this together also with some longer range hiking. Maybe some people here want to do some through hikes. Much of what I've been talking about impacts through hikers as well as ultra running. So lots of common ground there. So the convergence of the twain has the Titanic hit an iceberg metaphorically, and yeah, and there's been quite a few here. I'm going to show a couple of examples. So search and rescue is on the rise. Search and rescue is volunteer for the most part, almost exclusively driven. Colorado Search and Rescue last year had 3,600 incidents to report. And if that goes up to 5,000 or 8,000, who's going to do it? And if it's going to be supported, who's going to pay for it? And what happens if somebody dies? Right? These are very serious issues. So now you get a lot of images like this on Facebook of runners up some having trouble, or hikers, and search and rescue has to deploy and find them, right? So there has been a few Titanic hits. We all heard the Chinese marathon, 20 runners died. Garth's here, he can speak to a few of these numbers here, the New Zealand. Garth.
Southern Lakes off.
That's the one. People got into serious trouble, nobody died, but there was.
We had to evacuate 7.
So there's some pretty serious, I mean, if things would have been a little different, you would maybe had 7 deaths, not 7 cold people warming up in a hut. So this is very real. This opens up the question of litigation, responsibility. There's lots of bad fallout. These Chinese organizers went to jail. So in a society like China, where something bad happens, it looks bad in the world press, you go to jail if you're a run director in China and somebody dies on your run. So this has not happened in the United States yet, but certainly could be coming. And it's my opinion that these mountain races that I do, a lightning strike is going to be the first time we're going to have someone get killed. And what do we do about that? So lightning and running is a whole nother topic. You give some time. So I'm going to kind of wrap up with this slide, and then there's a video I hope works, and then a summary slide. This was a group in Scotland that decided to test the idea of how long would someone with the minimal amount of gear, adequate gear, and sufficient gear stay comfortable, functioning, and more importantly, cognizant if they're out in some cold weather. In this case, they went out in 55-degree weather, 20 mile per hour wind. They ran up onto this hilltop or this upper part of the hill and sat on the ground. And then they I'm hoping the video has them at 30 minutes. And this individual is not happy. He's going to get hypothermia in another 20 minutes. And he knows it, and he's pulling the exit. And this person is sort of warm. He also has a space blanket. You think space blanket and a top and a hat. I'm going to be okay. He was losing so much heat in the ground that he was already getting hypothermic. And this guy was the only guy who was getting his money's worth, and he was just camping out with real insulated material, sitting on something insulated. He was actually not, I wouldn't say comfortable, but functional at 20 minutes. Let's see here.
Clear if I'm up here and I've done my ankle or something and I can't run, can't get myself off the hill. If I'm able to get hold of, make a phone call and call 999 police and ask for mountain rescue, I'm still going to be sat here at least an hour, depending where I am, maybe 2, before anybody's getting anywhere near me. So 20 minutes in, and I'm not really looking forward to the next 2 hours. But of course, I don't even have a mobile phone, so I can't even make that call. So really, I'm waiting till somebody misses me.
Okay, how you feeling, Ian?
So I'm now starting to feel a bit of a shiver coming on, and I'm certainly losing heat through the ground, and feeling a little bit of air out of here. I can feel the chill. So I think we're about 50 minutes in, and I wouldn't want to be sitting out here an awful lot longer. This bag it'll keep me alive, but it's not comfortable now.
How you feeling, Ben?
Like, I'm not feeling 100% warm, but I'm comfortable, and I feel like I can be, happy enough here for another hour, 2 hours. So yeah, I think I'm fairly well kitted out for surviving.
Ian, in his shorts, how you feeling?
I think I'm about as cold as I want to be, really.
So I guess there's a few messages for those of us who run and been out in those conditions. As long as you are running, you're okay. Even, I think it's Ian with the light gear on. As soon as you stop, for whatever reason, you twist an ankle, you have to take care of a buddy, you get cold within minutes and minutes downhill from there. So even the moderate amount of gear, you think this is enough gear. He was still cold at 30 minutes in and not really looking forward to the next 2 hours. And only this guy was carrying a lot of gear, really was fairly comfortable. But no runner is going to expect to be sitting there for 2 hours and carry that much gear. Usually you're here, but this person will stay alive in another 2 hours. He will probably get hypothermia and die, basically, unless somebody comes and has him. So it is surprisingly how fast you can get cold even as a runner. So some final words, speculative words. Commercialization, like I said, is a big deal. Maybe we're going to go back to what you said, these runs called fat ass runs, where all you did was show up. It's like our mountain trail series. All you do was show up for an advertisement. You were totally self-sustained. You just checked in with somebody. You went for the run with your own map, and you showed back up and you recorded your finish time. That might actually become kind of a cool thing to do on social media as a backlash. So that's some hope that we'll go back to the basics of ultra running. Like I said, ultra running growth in Asia and Europe is even more pronounced than in the US. What does that mean for this commercialization and where ultra running goes? I don't know. It's going to impact expectations. I don't know how it's going to go. I'd like to see it go back to fat ass kinds of runs because I'm personally motivated by the more solo or small group experience in the mountains, not the UTMB scene, but that's me. And this is going to continue to strain the volunteer base, both supporting runs, because those for-profit race directors are using volunteer labor to make a buck. At some point, those volunteers are going to say, hey, I want a piece of that $20,000 paycheck that you're getting. And then that's going to impact the running part, and it's still going to impact or also impact search and rescue situation. And that if we continue to have people with problems in the hills, who's going to volunteer to be a search and rescue worker or responder if every weekend you have to go out and rescue some inexperienced runner of a balding? So the $10,000 question, $10 million question, will running continue to grow in those exponential curves I show, or will it plateau? I mean, we're going to have runs like this. Great. That's the kind of run people think about when they say I'm an ultra runner. They envision this kind of experience, and they get this kind of experience. No, I know Garth's going, hey, that's a good run. It's the Sahara, the run in the Sahara Desert when thousands of people run between camps. So we'll see. Will ultrarunning continue to rise? Will some sanity come back to it and have it plateau out? We'll, plenty of time for questions, I think. If people having questions?
Great talk. Have you ever considered participating in the Barclay marathons?
The question is, have I ever considered something completely insane, like running one of the Barclay marathons? So the Barclay marathons are, just to get everybody on the same page, it's this crazy run in Tennessee in the spring when there's no leaves on the trees, and it's 100-mile-ish, a little more than 100 miles, and it's unmarked in the hills, in all the sort of thorn thickets, and it is crazy climbing, no GPS watches allowed, and it's go as you please between these books. Your number, you have to tear the page out of the book that has your bid number. No, I've never considered that to be anything I ever wanted to do. At the almost, we were at dinner, we were thinking, the equivalent to Barclay Marathon here would be running from here to the top of Caballo, straight, not using the trail through all the locusts, and finding a book that might be in White Canyon somewhere. And we can do that here. There's plenty of people who want to do the Barclay. There's crazy, and then there's that kind of crazy. And
Didn't we get some people into trouble or close trouble, even on a Davis Mountain run a few years ago, like with women going up the house swings?
so the question is, did we get anybody in trouble at the Hamas Mountain Runs? Yes, in 2014, we had the first snowfall. Mid-race, there was a large storm system came in, lots of snow. People did get hypothermic. The lesson learned for the race directors was let's have a required gear list for the next time that happens. And 10 years later, it never happened. 10 years later, this year, we had a required gear list, and it was very fortunate because it was actually the conditions were colder and wetter this year than 2014, and we could have some serious hypothermic situations, especially the runners that made it into Guahi Canyon and still had 15 or 20 miles to go with only pipeline aid station, which is, there's nothing there but the Bernia with a fire pit and some gels, and there's no way out really from there. So yes, we have had these situations happen. AMS happily, the race directing organization has a required gear list and it saved the day basically at this year's race. Yes.
So what do you do when there's lightning?
What do you do when there's lightning? Well, at Hard Rock, which is a 100-mile race above tree line in July, so close to the monsoon season, we intentionally have a very long cutoff to allow runners to hunker down and get off the ridges for hours at a time, for 6 or 7 hours, and presumably they can still make the cutoff and finish the race. So with lightning, there's just no way around it. You have to get off the ridge line and not the electrical conductor on top of the ridge where you're going to get zapped. So if you're with somebody, you separate. If it's hair standing on the head and lightning's going to hit, you separate your feet, squat down, and hope that the ground current difference is not going to kill you. I mean, it's my opinion that a race like Hard Rock, the first fatalities we're going to have, it's going to be a lightning strike somewhere, sometime, somehow. And we've had some very close calls. And that is going to be a very sad day for lots of reasons, including liability for the race organizers. Putting runners in harm's way, and we know lightning is a problem. Or you run Jason Howden, who's 6'4". And splat down. He gets, don't sound too close.
Dave?
Yes.
So, what are some of your favorite races that still have this sort of older school, like the San Juan Solstice? You can talk about some of the other ones that really have that older vibe, that's not so commercialized and not so big.
So what are some of the old school or relic old school runs, I'll say, that are enjoyable for other reasons than the commercialization speed? In the Western US, we have races like the Bear up in Utah, the Bear 100, which is still very much old school. San Juan Solstice 50 that I like so much is still pretty much old school, although they've opened the field up quite a bit. It used to be 150-ish type runner numbers, and now it's 250, so it's getting a little crowded. Certainly local runs like the Havens Run are very good. The Hard Rock 100 is still, we try very hard to preserve the old value system. So there are a lot in the Western US that are still very good. There's a High Lonesome 100 up in Salida has a good value system, trying to preserve the runner experience and not take a bunch of money, even though it is a for-profit run. So there are a number of races, the older, more traditional races are trying to preserve that. So the Wasatch 100 in Utah, Hard Rock, Angeles Crest in California. The race organizations really try to keep it as old school as they can, whereas the European races are going, the more runners, the better, the more commercialization, the better, and they're embracing the other end of the spectrum. So we have this split developing. It's interesting to see that way that goes, whether the public or the running community is going to say UTMB type races are the way to go, forget the old way, or maybe they'll come back to the old way, the local ones go. Yeah, and they're buying up races, and they're doing like the Ironman-ish with the Ironman communities have a problem with, you know, a single owner of all these races and charging a lot of money.
Vertical integration, localization of the.
Yeah.
Speaking of kind of grassroots, did you check out the Philmont Ranch?
Did I check out the Philmont Ranch 50, which has a new race? No, I have not run it. I'm very interested in it. It could be my next 50 I want to do. I know it's local and old school.
Yeah.
Very much enjoyable local-ish racing. It's over in the other side of the side race, but I've heard good things. Jason Halliday, which I'm like Milani, really, he has run it and recommends it. So I would like to go do that.
And then you could say why you picked picture of Killian, was it illustrated positive or negative?
Why did I take a picture of Killian? Killian is very interesting. He's probably the world's best male ultra runner right now. He has developed his own brand, but it's a brand called In Normal that's really geared to trying to change at least the impact we have as runners on the world with our carbon footprint. And his gear is meant to last a lot longer than traditional shoes, for example. He has recycled type materials. So he is trying to do the right thing with it. It was just an illustration of a famous, like, #1 ultra runner, and what do? They start their own brand. And of course, they're trying to make a living, so you can't fault them for that. But maybe I should put a more obnoxious runner that is, I won't go into brands, but you know, some outdoor brands that do not have that same philosophy. Any other questions? I hope I didn't sway anybody from joining the ranks of ultrarunners. It's a lot of fun, and there's still a lot of space for enjoyment. So just take your raincoat.
All
Thank you very
right.
much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And thank you, Dave, for sharing your amazing knowledge on such an incredible sport. Everyone, please remember to keep a lookout for a quick survey coming to your email. Check out the Peak website for some great upcoming summer programs like our Summer Family Evenings starting in June. First, we have the Rattlesnake Museum coming from Albuquerque. So if you want to see live rattlesnakes, please come by. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and have a great night.